Takeshi has been kidnapped by the goblin Crotus in hopes of winning the favor of his master, Master Nastier. The demon had previously complained about how long it took him to prepare and cast spells, time that could be better spent, taking over the world. But Crotus thinks that Takeshi's computer can process spells thanks to its spell checker function. He's been brought to the cemetery where Nastier has set up camp. This has left the rest of the X-Terminators in a bit of a lurch. Without Takeshi, they have no mode of mass transportation. And while they saw Artie's broadcast of his location, they still don't know exactly which cemetery he's being held at. This has brought the X-Terms to the New York Public Library. They've been poring over maps of the city, comparing each one to the one in their memories. And finally they think that they've got it. The cemetery where Artie and Leech are being held. Now they just gotta get there and do something about it. Which is when the books on the upper shelves of the library start flying off of their perches, raining down on the kids. Rusty starts to burn them with his fire powers, but Skids warns him not to. They're in a library, after all. 1, they don't want to damage property, and then 2, they don't want to burn the place to the ground. She pushes out her force field, protecting him and Boom Boom as well. Richter grabs the map before he runs into the field, but the leg of the table suddenly comes to life. With a clawed hand, it trips Richter. A well-timed bomb destroys the hand, allowing him to be pulled into the safety of Skids' force field. Books continue to pour onto the kids. One of them exclaims that it's like something out of Ghostbusters, and honestly, I had been wondering exactly how much inspiration Inferno took from that most historic of movies. Anyways, Richter shakes the books off of them, and the kids take off, fleeing the library. As they run past the lion statues that frame the stairway, one of them comes to life. Roaring, it swipes at Boom Boom. A fire blast knocks it back, though, and the statue reverts to normal. The teens take a moment to catch their breath. Whatever goblin magic had been pursuing them seems to have worn off for now. It seems like the closer that they get to learning about wherever this location is, the greater the spell acts to stop them. Someone doesn't want them to get to that cemetery. But that's where they're headed. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 24.3 of the X-Men's Inferno crossover, Demon Reign. Simonson and Anderson open us up with an exciting scene that sets the stakes immediately. The X-Terminators' friends are captured, they're trying to get them back, and Goblin forces are animating even the city against them. We even have brief uses of everyone's powers and codenames, or their regular names in Rusty's case, just so that you know who the cast is and what they can do. This is a solid, tried and true comic book opening, and God, I love reading older comics because of it. From there, we jump to the cemetery, where a pair of police officers are investigating the weird goings-ons. They're captured by goblins and brought to Nastier, where we pick up on Crotus's explanation for him bringing Takeshi here. Nastier is intrigued by this computer idea, but Takeshi isn't going to help a monster like him. The new goblins display their catch of cops, so Nastier displays his own talents, hoping to intimidate the child. It looks like Nastier is eating one of the cops, and the guy does scream as if he's being eaten. But when the demon is done, all he's done is consume whatever good was in that person. All that's left is a new goblin, enslaved to Nastier's will. He sends the cop goblin out to bolster his own forces, which are taking a beating over an X-Factor. Nastier then turns back to Takeshi, wondering exactly what kind of form he'll take. But Takeshi just crosses his arms. I don't think so, man. Whatever you do to me might mess with my X gene and ruin my powers. Then I can't do anything, he argues. Nastier sees his point. Then perhaps he'll turn one of the other mutants, Artie, just to see what happens. And then perhaps Leech. The other goblins start shouting that they are their reward. The master promised that they could eat them. So he turns his attention to Takeshi again. He doesn't know how long he can resist his own curiosity, much less his goblin's hunger. He doesn't even know if the boy can do what he says, to be quite honest. Takeshi then volunteers to prove his worth. He asks for the cop's guns, which he is handed, and he then transforms them into a laser pistol. He tells Nastier that he'll blow his head off unless he sets them down carefully. They're all getting out of here, now! But the demon just laughs. He has his own way of handling the threat of technology. The laser gun suddenly turns into a carapaced monster, swinging around to bite at Takeshi's face. He drops it immediately. Nastier says that he has been doing the same thing to the entire island of Manhattan, but it's slow and exhausting work. This is why he wants Takeshi's computer, to speed up the process. And this explains the strange occurrences that we've seen in the last 2 issues with the attacking phone lines and such. As the X-Terminators hop these subway change machines, they see their own example of this transformation. There's a guy who's putting a token into the coin collector, and he has his hand swallowed by a mouth with jagged metal teeth. Luckily for him, Boom Boom notices his plight and blows up the collector as she passes by, saving his hand. The transformation effect has also hit the subway car, too. Slowed down, Boom Boom has to run in order to catch the door, which is barely being held open by Richter, its sharp teeth struggling to close. They actually do close, locking Tabby out for a second, but Richter then starts to vibrate the car. He'll shake this thing so badly that it's going to fall apart if it doesn't open up. The car does open, and Tabby falls in. The car then takes off at record speeds, streaking to who knows where. Nastier, meanwhile, catches the transformed laser gun and crushes it between his claws. He dangles the corpse over Takeshi's face, letting the green goo that is its blood creep near him. Then he does his big villain speech. Sim has tasked him with transforming Manhattan into Limbo, but thanks to his transmode virus, Sim has forgotten the ways of magic. It is the one who casts the spell who controls its power and knows it intimately. Once the spell is done, Nastier will be the one controlling Limbo. Casting a scrying spell, Nastier checks in on Sim. His body is fully consumed by the transmode virus as he looms over the New Mutants, and Nastier notes that this power has made him forgetful and arrogant. He doesn't remember what it means to be a demon anymore, but Nastier does, and he'll rule both worlds when he's done. Takeshi finally agrees to help Nastier, but he confides in Leech that he's only doing it to buy them time. The X-Terminators are coming, he knows it. So he starts to tell Nastier a list of demands. He wants Artie and Leech as his assistants. He needs health food to keep his body running. You don't want him getting tired. He needs food for the babies so that their crying won't distract him, and diapers and toys, some nice cribs. He could also use some computer chips. The more high-end, the better. The better the equipment you get me, the better spell computer that I can make for you, my man. And for a brief moment, Nastier rages at this. The child, after all, is in no position to bargain. But Takeshi just shrugs. Hey man, if you want the work done, this is what I need. Nothing to do about it. Which is great. Neither one of these two really knows what the other can do. So Takeshi is actually in the best position for bargaining that he can be. But this only works because Nastier is so uninformed about computers and mutant powers in general. It's kind of a perfect storm of stupidity on both of their parts, and I absolutely love it. The X-Terminators cross under the East River, and their ears pop, indicating that they are in Queens. They start screaming for the subway to stop, and the driver is a skull-faced demon, a cigar chomped between his teeth. He tells them to stop shouting. When he decides to stop the train, it'll be their final stop. Skids is a former Morlock, which was a colony of mutants living in the tunnels underneath New York, and Rusty asks if she can drive this thing. She can, and so he slugs the driver, knocking him out and allowing Skids to take control of the car. Knocking the driver out reverts him to normal, just like when Rusty blasted the lion statue at the library. Skids pulls on the brake and the car comes to a stop, but then the walls around them start to screech. They're closing in, trying to crush the occupants. Rusty burns through the door, picks up the conductor, and they start booking it along the track. Which is when they're pounced upon by a plague of rats. Oh. At the cemetery, Takeshi has these goblins running all over the city collecting the goods that he needs to make the spell checker. We can see that we've got some rocking bassinets, cribs, toys, diapers, clothes, and blankies for the captured infants. Takeshi's feet are littered with boxes from computer stores labeled Sony or IBM. It's a pretty good haul. But you know what? It's just not good enough for Takeshi. The goblins complain of being run ragged. They've only eaten a few bones, master. They need meat. Nastier lets them eat the remaining cop instead of Takeshi's friends. But he is done waiting. Get to work, or the goblins will be eating your friends next. Takeshi can't stall anymore. He finally breaks. Fine, he'll do it. But he's building a wheelchair first. He needs to be mobile for this, dang it. The X-Terminators find a ladder and manage to escape the rats. They leave the conductor behind at a bar and start to figure out their next move. They just happen to be next to some motorcycles, and their owners exit the building. They're worried that these kids are going to damage their bikes, so they confront them, grabbing Richter and pushing Rusty and... making kissy faces at Boom Boom. The teens fight them off and borrow their bikes in order to make the last leg of their journey. Meanwhile, Takeshi has been working on Nastier's computer. The demon is growing impatient. He needs to finish his spell by sunset, so he needs this computer finished. Takeshi has been working on it, man! But Nastier needs specific inputs for his spell to work. That takes time. It just can't be helped, my dude. The Exterminators then arrive at the cemetery. They disturb a guard goblin, burn him alive, and then sneak into the mausoleum. They arrive just in time for Nastier to give a verbal update on his plans. He only needs one more baby in order to channel the power needed for the entrance spells, and then 3 more after that to complete the final transformation. He reaches for the computer, ready to cast a spell to transport them all to Times Square, but as his claw approaches the piano-like keyboard, sparks erupt from the computer. You know, Takeshi was afraid this would happen, he says sarcastically. The little goblins couldn't touch his equipment before, back when Artie and Leech were kidnapped, so it makes sense that Nastier wouldn't be able to touch it either. It probably has something to do with the electromagnetic vibes they give off, he guesses. Then fine! Nastier stomps on Takeshi, pinning him against the floor. He will type the spell for him, or the other mutants will be eaten. Takeshi warns the demon that his dyslexia makes writing hard, but, he'll do it. Just don't hurt Artie and Leech. The Exterminators have finally seen enough. They rush in to save the babies and stop Nastier. But as they're scooping up kids, more goblins arrive with the final baby that Nastier needed. Leech's powers accidentally disrupt Skids' force field, and the mutants are quickly overwhelmed. The older kids are knocked out, and now serve as hostages. If Takeshi shows anything less than total obedience to Nastier, their lives are forfeit. Nastier has him type the teleportation spell, and they reappear in Times Square, the source of all the negative energy in New York City. The goblins fly the babies up into the sky, creating a pentagram. Takeshi types the final symbols. The spell is cast. Silver lines of power connect the babies in midair, forming a massive pentagram. The pentagram serves as a portal, and as it opens, the Dark Child, Ilyana Rasputin, is making her way through it. But Nastier is the one controlling this portal. He will keep it open, allowing all of Limbo to pour through, and he will rule the Inferno that consumes this island. I'm really impressed by how simple and yet effective Simonson's plotting is here. Every scene drives the narrative forward in some way. I can't even say that she stops to do some character introspection or a comedy bit this time around, because she even works those moments into the forward momentum of the story anyways. It's just really effective writing. I do think that the comedy has dissipated a bit by the time we reach issue 3, which is kind of nice. I don't mind some levity in my comic books, but like I said last episode, this is at its core a horror story. Be horrific. And this time around, Simonson lets the book be horrific. Random objects are attacking the cast, Nastier Floopin eats a guy, and it really feels like the bad things are beginning to close in. Obviously, this is part 3 of a 4-part miniseries, so we should be seeing a rise to the climax, and Simonson really sells me on that here. Nastier appears to have pretty much everything that he needs to unleash Limbo. Takeshi wasn't able to stop him, and now the X-Terminators are out cold and captured. Additionally, no one knows that they're here. No one is coming to save them. Things look and really feel dire. And that is saying something, because this is an American superhero comic where the good guys always win, you know? So let's check in on the other half of our narrative. It's time for the New Mutants to get into this action. The New Mutants officially join the crossover with issue 71 of their comic book, written by Louise Simonson, pencils by Bret Blevins, inks by Al Williamson, and colors by Glynis Oliver. The mutants had just finished up an adventure of their own in outer space, the details of which I won't go into here. Maybe someday. On this particular day, their lineup consists of Cannonball, aka Sam Guthrie, who blasts through the air like his namesake. Additionally, when he's blasting, he's nigh invulnerable, as he's been known to say in his Kentucky twang. Danny Moonstar, aka Mirage, is a Cheyenne capable of manifesting whatever a person fears the most. She has also learned to manifest what a person desires the most at this point in her story. Rain Sinclair is Wolfsbane, able to turn into a wolf, or maintaining an in-between werewolf form with enhanced senses that always come with that kind of thing. We also have the alien Warlock, who can change his shape into just all kinds of things. Roberto da Costa is Sunspot. He absorbs sunlight and turns it into physical strength. When he does so, his whole body is covered in coruscating darkness, and there's these little, pops of energy that appear around him. We also have the alien Gossamer, who has been hanging around with the team as part of their latest set of adventures. She is a beautiful, if kinda creepy-looking girl, in my mind, with big elfin eyes, pointed ears, and a pile of blonde hair on her head that is half as tall as she is. As part of her alien wiles, Gossamer naturally attracts men to her, and makes women self-conscious and jealous, and yes, if you think she was brought into this book to make drama, she absolutely was. Last but not certainly least, we have Illyana Rasputin, aka Magic, with a K, or, as she's known by her other title sometimes, Darkchild, with a E at the end. This identity is mainly used by the demons of Limbo, as they tempt her to use dark magic and give in to the corrupting influence of the realm. They were on their way back home, and they had to pass through Limbo, because that's how Illyana's teleporting powers work, except this time they didn't pass through. They just stopped in Limbo. There they find Sim and a techno-organic army of demons waiting for them. Roberto tells Illyana to port them through back to Earth, but she can't. Something is stopping her. The kids then explode into action to defend themselves. As they are fighting, Mirage reminds them all of Destiny's prophecy regarding Illyana. This is one of those things that I had forgotten. There is a mutant named Destiny who works with the bad guy group, the Brotherhood of Mutants, and she can see possible futures, and she is generally vague and kind of infuriating in a storytelling kind of way, but back in New Mutants issue 65, there was a confrontation between the two groups, right? Destiny told Illyana that she had to leave the Earth and learn, or the Earth would be destroyed. So Illyana argues that they did leave the Earth, and she did learn. She knows that there are others like her, people with demons in their souls. What matters is how they deal with that evil. The fighting drives Illyana to Sim, her soul sword glowing with flickering silver fire. Techno-demons burn to ash at its touch. How dare he turn her kingdom against her, she rages. But Sim just smiles. It isn't his fault the realm has turned on her. Limbo reflects its ruler, and if it turns her stomach, then it's turned on her. Magic launches herself at Sim and cleaves him in two. The remaining halves fade to ash, but then Sim reappears from the pile, slamming a massive fist into Magic. She is shoved into the ground as he reminds her of his techno-organic state. With her trapped under his fist, he grabs the soul sword with his other hand. Magic blanches. The sword is a part of her, crafted from her very soul. How can he wield it? Sim displays the blade proudly. Her soul's corrupted by the dark touch of Limbo. So is the sword. He swings it down, eager to see how it'll affect Illyana, but her silver armor thickens and defends her from the blow. He'll need to find another way to kill her. But her friends, he won't need to try nearly as hard with them. Illyana twists in the ground. He's right. The only reason they're in this mess at all is because of her. She can't let her friends pay for her mistakes. Her stepping disc may not take them back to Earth, but she can move them around Limbo. A glowing circle suddenly envelops them all, and the New Mutants are gone from the field of battle. As the demons regroup, a glowing image forms in the air. Nastier. He warns Sim against killing the Dark Child, and the big demon assures him that he was just playing. He'll honor the terms of their deal. But now, and here he holds up the soul sword, Sim has the sword. Sim rules Limbo now. And soon, he'll rule the Earth, baby. Oh, will you now? Nastier asks. Darkchild escaped, did she not? And it was his magics that blocked her return to Earth. You know, if you ask nicely, Nastier offers, maybe he'll even tell Sim where she is now. The New Mutants take a moment to catch their breath. They have reappeared in Belasco's throne room, where this all began for Illyana. She recounts what happened to her, being kidnapped, the alternate reality X-Men and their dark fates. She thinks that Belasco chose her because maybe she has an inborn affinity for this place. Her mutation lets her control Limbo's stepping discs, after all. Illyana throws herself to the ground. The other mutants protest her story. The X-Men couldn't have died in her past. They only just died on Earth recently. They're only believed dead, don't worry about it, they're going to be fine. And they know that Shadowcat is still alive. Illyana lifts her head, and her red eyes glare. Time works differently in Limbo. Different choices lead to different actions, which creates different people. Her choices is what kept her alive, but it killed her closest friends. Cannonball, Sam, notes that she sounds almost proud of herself. Rain is beginning to freak out, the palpable evil of Limbo grating at her soul. She just wants to get home, but Roberto points out that Illyana is home. A portal opens nearby and demons dive out. Their clawed hands reach for the Dark Child, but she summons a new stepping disc, and the mutants teleport again. This time they appear in a series of caves and tunnels, next to the broken corpse of Colossus, Illyana's older brother. Sim killed him, and the mutants are horrified by this sight. Obviously, some part of them didn't believe Illyana's story. They didn't think that the X-Men actually died here. But here is solid, physical, horrible proof. A little girl's scream catches their attention. Across a chasm, 6-year-old Illyana flees from Sim. They've teleported into the past, and get to witness Illyana's history firsthand. Upset at her for some reason or another, Sim grabs the little girl by the leg, raises her above his head, and he slams her into the ground. Rain tries to push forward, but Illyana stops her. They can't do anything. This has already happened, and for Illyana to be strong enough, mean enough, to defeat Belasco, it needs to happen again. Sam argues that's too high a cost to pay. Warlock adds that Earth is Illyana's home, not this place. But is that true? She asks. Sim never killed her. He tortured her, abused her, yes, but he never killed her. They watch him drag the little girl away, and Illyana warns Rain not to watch what comes next. But then, surprising even Illyana, a portal opens in the air. Nastier blasts Sim with magic, warning him that the girl must live. Illyana doesn't remember this happening at all. She can feel Nastier's sorcerer's potential from here. The two demons start to fight, and tears are running down Rain's face. All this time, she had such horrible thoughts about Illyana, that she was evil and that she'd killed people and she consorted with demons willingly, but now she knows that she didn't have a choice. She was just a little girl. None of this is her fault. She hugs Illyana, but Illyana doesn't return the hug. Another portal opens. The demons are still following them, and Illyana teleports them out again. We then cut to New York City and the Empire State Building. But before we check in on Magneto, I just want to say, I miss the mischievous tone of X-Terminators. I know I said last episode that the back and forth tone of the book was a bit frustrating, but this opening sequence in the New Mutants is so dramatic and traumatic. It just hits you over the head with an overwhelming situation so fast, and then we're thrown into the tragedy of Illyana's life that I'm legit kind of overwhelmed emotionally. I don't remember having this visceral of a reaction the last time that I read this story. It might just be because I'm doing the breakdown, and so I'm investing, maybe somehow or some reason, I'm investing more of myself in this book than I would be reading it normally, but oh, man. To be fair, the last time that I would have read this would have been for my New Mutants collection, so I probably would have read so much of Simonson's writing voice up to that point that I had probably kind of checked out on the emotional weight of everything, and had just been reading, like, on autopilot. Okay, I gotta collect my thoughts. Simonson throws us right into this story, opening with a tense action sequence. If we were flipping through this comic at the newsstand, as you would have in the 80s, or at a comic shop, this is a pretty fast way of getting our attention and drawing us into the rest of the book. She then starts taking us on a tour of Illyana's greatest painful memories, not just telling us what she has done and who she is, but literally showing us these things. We see the bones of Ket, her alternate reality Kitty Pryde. We see her sit upon Belasco's throne, her red eyes peering out from the darkness, and we see the mangled steel corpse of her brother. The artwork here is macabre, haunting, and not even the running commentary from the other New Mutants can really help to lighten the mood. That said, if this is your first issue of New Mutants, wow, boy, did you pick a bad time to show up. The cast of the comic doesn't really get introduced at all. Their powers aren't explained or demonstrated very well, and there is very little recap of recent events in order to catch you up. In this issue's defense, this is issue 71 of New Mutants, so at 12 issues a year, this comic had been running for almost 6 years exactly at this point. If you weren't reading this already, this probably isn't where you were going to start reading it. And if you were reading it, then you probably bought the last several issues anyways, and you know what's going on. For me, though, as a reader, I love this kind of opening. I like the allusions to older stories and the blatant use of continuity. This is the kind of comic that makes me want to buy more back issues and connect all of these dots that I'm being shown. This is a comic that makes me want to buy more comics. Beautifully done. As I mentioned before, Simonson writes this story all much more seriously than she did any of X-Terminators up to this point. There are no silly pranks happening here. There are no dumb 80s-inspired costume changes. This is all serious business. And I'm kind of left shaken by how much it all affected me. The main point to everything that we've seen so far is to really sell Illyana as a tortured character. It's been kind of easy for her teammates to brush off her limbo experiences in the past. After all, she already beat everybody who challenged her. She rules Limbo, she has the Soul Sword, she controls the stepping discs. For the most part, Limbo is tamed, and her past is behind her. So, from their perspective, what's the problem? But for Illyana, Limbo haunts her every step. She has a lifetime of trauma wrapped up there, and her retelling of her life story and her defense of it shows this. When she says that she is responsible for the alternate X-Men's death, Sam states that she sounds proud of it. And to some degree she has to be. If it wasn't for those actions that led to their deaths, then she would be dead. Or worse, she would have no soul left and be fully a demon. Illyana has had to weaponize her terrible experiences in order to survive them, and it has left her scarred. We see several suggestions in this short time that Illyana already views herself as a monster. When she's captured by Sim and he takes the Soul Sword, he can't kill her, but he can kill her friends. When they see Illyana being beaten by Sim, teen Illyana won't let them interfere. Without her past shaping her, there wouldn't be anyone standing next to the New Mutants now, fighting to find a way home for them. So Illyana is motivated to save her friends, but not herself. In her eyes, she belongs here. Her silver armored form no longer looks regal. It looks reflective, like nothing can touch her anymore. Her eyes are red, her body language is slumped and tired. When Rain sympathizes with her and hugs Illyana, Illyana just stands there. Because she can't feel Rain's sympathy at all. She's had to be hard. She's had to make incredibly difficult decisions. The second that she stops, the second that she lets all of that go, what does she have left? Then, more demons show up, and they have to keep running. Okay, so we're in New York. A gray haze has settled over the city, obscuring even the tallest of buildings, the Empire State Building. But the building is looking taller than normal. The shadow of the building, which we can barely see through that gray haze, rises up and up and up into the sky. But nobody in the city seems to notice that anything's different about it. Standing on the viewing platform is Magneto, and with him is the Hellfire Club. The club has invited Magneto to join their ranks, eager to have both his powers and the influence that he wields over the young New Mutants on their side. He's been thinking this over for the past few weeks of the comic, and while he's still unsure of his answer, the club has noticed that something's weird in the city. He agrees. He can feel the energy in the air. The club agrees. Their psychics say that it is pure evil. Regular New York tourists are also scattered around the viewing area, looking through the standing binoculars. How none of them have noticed Emma Frost and Selene of the Hellfire Club is beyond me, because they're both mostly naked and wearing lingerie and they look great, but in any case, one of the tourists suddenly starts screaming. The tourist throws himself back from the binoculars, which then blink. Smiling with jagged teeth, the binoculars apologize for what happened to their eyes. But they're its now. Magneto blasts the binoculars, tearing it apart. Nastier's spell has managed to bring the entire building to life, and it starts to buck and shake. Using his magnetic powers, Magneto helps stabilize things so that the human tourists can climb into the elevator. But when the elevator opens at the bottom of the building, a wave of blood and bones wash out. The elevator appears to have eaten them. Now, Magneto and this scene don't go on to really have a big role in Inferno. We will see them again, but Simonson includes this scene because these characters have been an ongoing background plot in the New Mutants. She is checking in, reminding the audience that they still exist in the world and are up to things on their own. I almost skipped talking about the scene, to be honest, but I made sure to include it because of the outright mass murder that happens in it. While X-Terminators has had some rather spooky inanimate objects suddenly become animate objects, they haven't been really all that bad. I mean, we've got a mean payphone, a swiping lion statue, a rocketing subway car, and from what we could see, these things weren't even that lethal. But with this scene, Simonson is indicating an increase in hostilities. As Nastier's spell has been allowed to sink in, the city has become more violent and dangerous. We even see present-time Nastier laughing as he watches the previous scene, enjoying the slaughter. This allows us to transition to past Nastier. Illyana and the New Mutants drop from her stepping disc. Past Nastier is wearing a purple robe, which is a smart design choice as it helps differentiate time periods between the two characters, and he then introduces himself. He had hoped to apprentice to Belasco as a sorcerer, but Belasco seems to have preferred human students. Belasco first took on Alternate Storm, after all, and when she betrayed him, he chose a younger, more pliable student, little Illyana. He then stole Belasco's spellbook, mastered the spells within, and now offers his aid to Illyana. Sim has amassed a demon army, and it's just waiting to be unleashed on Earth. He can help her and her friends escape to Earth, but here Illyana cuts him off. Deals with demons, she says, always have a price. Nastier smiles, as best his horse face can. He wants to help her, because he loves her. Illyana's soul sword is the most powerful aspect of her magic. When Sim claimed it, the only reason that he could is because she rejects that part of herself, Nastier explains. She fears and hates Limbo, and what it has done to her. If she reclaims the sword, if she reclaims its power and all that it means, she can defeat Sim and his army. And with Nastier's more natural connections to Limbo, he can use the stepping discs to send her right to him. All he asks is that if, perhaps at some time in the future, she might consider becoming his dark bride. The mutants protest this. Any agreement with a demon is suspect. But Illyana can't see another way out of this. She needs to get the mutants back to Earth. Sim needs to be stopped. And, this guy does say that he loves her. Rain reminds her that Belasco said the same thing, but then she begins to panic. Smaller demons have begun to surround them all, and one of them is creepily caressing her face. Tears are streaming from her eyes, and she is hanging on, but this is clearly a traumatic event for her. She is not enjoying this. Illyana can't wait. Her friends need her now, whatever the future might hold. She agrees to Nastier's terms. They teleport out, and Crotus approaches Hithmothda. He doesn't understand why he would ally with a rival. After all, Illyana rules Limbo. Nastier wants to. The bigger demon backhands the goblin away. He doesn't need Illyana killed, like Sim hopes to do. He needs her for his plans. The human need to choose right over wrong is paramount to Nastier's plan. Or at least it will be. In the future. Which is actually the present day. Which is where we are now. Bolstered by Nastier's information and the need to save her friends, Illyana and the mutants appear near Sim. And she comes out a-swingin'. Casting beams of light, dodging Sim's clumsy swings, Illyana keeps the bigger demon off balance. She kicks him in the face, knocks him down, and as she stands on him, Illyana claims the Soul Sword again. And all the tainted power it commands. In a burst of light, Illyana is remade. Her silver armor is gone, replaced by thick, mottled, scaled skin. Red horns, twisted and bent like thorns, sprout from her forehead. She has goat legs and hooves covered by long, rough hair. A long, thin serpent tongue slides out of her fanged mouth. Her blonde hair has turned dark red and floats around her. She has actually become the Darkchild. Using her newly reacquired powers, Illyana now casts a new portal. She can feel some kind of barrier blocking its way, but now she won't be stopped. She pours her power into the portal and pushes through. A portal opens in the sky above Times Square, and the mutants fall through it. Behind them is a downfall of demons. Rain shouts for Illyana to close the portal, but she can't. There's nothing she can do about it. Nastier, this time present-day Nastier, drops from his own portal in front of Illyana. She curses him for betraying her. And he smiles gleefully. She chose to reclaim her power. She chose to open the portal. Only she could do so, but only he could wield the power to keep that portal open. She did all of this to save her friends. His friends are just hitching a ride. Hurt, Illyana states the obvious. He lied to her. He betrayed her. Well, of course he did. Nastier really and truly loves her. But he is a demon. And so the two halves of this narrative have been knotted together. On this read-through, I'm really impressed by how Simonson has woven Nastier's story through all of the issues of it so far. His portion of this actually works really seamlessly, despite it moving from one comic to another and even jumping time periods. If you're not following all of it, Nastier used the babies stolen in X-Terminators to cast a spell, blocking the power of Limbo's stepping discs to reach Earth. This then forced Illyana to stay in Limbo once she teleported into it, which is what we just read, and when she used her reclaim power to force her way through his blocking spell, the second part of it kicked in. That spell used her own power as fuel, widening the portal and keeping it propped open. Obviously, the concept that Nastier loves Illyana is a weird, twisted one, and if I have any complaint about this portion of the story, it's that. I don't have enough knowledge of the big nasty to tell if he can really love anyone, much less someone he's betrayed. But he is a bad guy, so his sense of love should probably be a weird, twisted one. The important stuff here is the emotional work with Illyana, and I think Simonson absolutely nails all of that. The trauma of her experience in Limbo feels real, and it is heightened by Rain's panicked expressions throughout. For context, Rain's mother was a sex worker. She died during childbirth, and Rain was taken in by a man named Reverend Craig. All of this was unknown to Rain, but Craig was her father. Ashamed of his own behavior and his sin, Craig was incredibly hard on Rain as he was raising her, and he was even worse when her mutation developed. As such, Rain is very respectful of authority figures. She is very timid, and she is also incredibly religious. Limbo, and all of its demons, is not a pleasant trip for her. It is everything that she has been told is evil and is bad in the world, and there's confirmation right there. She's been to hell. But despite Rain's judgment of Illyana, she is still the person that Illyana is looking to the most in this issue. When Illyana wants to gauge what is right, at least for this moment, she's looking to Rain. She wants to protect Rain. The other mutants aren't happy about being in Limbo, don't get me wrong, but they've also been here before, and they've been in combat situations before. They can handle themselves. But it's Rain's tears that motivate Illyana to really get them out of here, to get them someplace safe. and reclaim her power in doing so. That's what Nastier meant when he told Crotus that he was counting on the human need to do right. In an attempt to save her friends, Illyana has accidentally damned the world. Next time, the X-Terminators meet the New Mutants for the first time, and, forgive the expression, nothing will ever be the same. Nastier focuses his attention on Illyana as he tries to trick her into accepting her own dark power. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 24.4 of the X-Men's Inferno crossover, Deals with the Devil. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.